If we have Mr. Kunle ready, we'll discuss this and we'll find out its broad implications ahead of talks for a mega party as well. The PDP, the largest opposition party that enjoyed the larger part of Nigeria's democracy, has been also mirrored in terms of its internal crisis, in terms of the position of a national secretary and a national chairman as well. Who are the parties that would need to form a mega party? Hello, good morning to you, Mr. Kunle. Can you hear me? Hello, sir.
Hello.
Good morning to you, sir. Welcome and thanks for joining us on the program.
Good morning, ADD. How is Abuja?
Abuja is very well. How is Lagos?
Lagos is fine.
Good to hear. Now, I know 2027 is just around the corner, but there's been quite heated conversations in the past 24 hours over this rotational presidency. And it's stemming from comments made by the APC National Chairman, Dr. Abdullahi Ganduje. He's saying that power should stay with the South under the party's arrangement. But then again, the ISWAP group is saying that it's not right to kill ambitions of any northerner who would like to vie in terms of adding that to his CV of political aspirations and possible emergence as the next president of Nigeria. Let's get your thoughts on this issue as we begin the conversations ahead of what 2027 would portend for political ambitions in Nigeria.
Thank you so much. First and foremost, I want to say that since when we have been rotating from south to north to east to west, what has benefited Nigerians? Look, it's time to rotate from members of the ruling class ruling Nigeria to members of the oppressed and the people's class taking over. So for me, the rotation should be between the oppressors and the oppressed. It is the oppressors that have been ruling Nigeria, in which President Tinubu is one of the most crass of all of them. We now need the oppressed people to rule Nigeria. So if we're going to do the rotation, enough of the anti-people's party, we need a pro-people's party. No, we don't want to know where it's from, but we need a pro-people's party to lead Nigeria. That's the rotation we need.
Now, this conversation has also stemmed from a movement in the lower chambers of the National Assembly. They're looking to rejig it. And now with the coming on board of more development commissions, people are talking about if a regional form of government will be had, and should the tenure of the president be extended from 4 terms to a single 6-year term. I don't know what you make of these conversations, and is it tenable?
The first thing we should be talking about is terminating the current tenure of the current president, because it's putting no food on the table for Nigerians.
If you say terminating, it will call to question what you pretend, because it will only be done through the hour of an election. And with the way we see other political parties, particularly the PDP, who looked to have been the major challengers in the last election, alongside the Labour Party, those two parties have some level of internal crisis. And the only conversations people are talking about now is the possibility of a mega party. So when you say terminating, which of these parties stands a best chance rivaling the APC in 2027?
The People's Party. I can tell you very seriously that we don't need any election to terminate this current government. The hunger, it is beholding on Nigerians. It has increased money for data, increased money for electricity, increased money on all tariffs. There are no hospitals, no schools. We have a situation where the country is already turning to a large reservoir of unemployed people. So Nigerians should rise once and for all and terminate this government.
In every agitation, there is always provision for what is constitutionally tenable, especially with history not being so kind to such gatherings. Last year, we saw the hashtag end bad governance protest, hashtag end hunger protest. We also saw what it turned into when the protest was at some points hijacked and the level of destruction done to property of the state. In light of that history, would you want Nigerians to hit the streets again?
First and foremost, this constitution was not written by Nigerians. So if Nigerians decide today in the Congress that the constitution is no more binding, we do another constitution for ourselves, the people's constitution, not the constitution that by the military. It's another attacker. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing is that Those who ideally end up on the police officers, led by IDP and who shot at people, killed a lot of people in Niger State, and especially in the north. Got a lot of minors into the prison, arrested a lot of, and I've been arresting a lot of people for cyberbullying. I've arrested Tiki, I've arrested Bradin, I've arrested Jennifer Timid, I've arrested arrested me too in August. So all of these things are cyberbullying. So it's showing very seriously that Nigerians are resistant, and as soon as possible, we are going to pull that resistance into real major life. And what we need to do is to pull down this government in a very clinical manner, because it matters. This government has been pulling down a lot of Nigerians. It has pulled down our wealth, it has pulled down our individual resources. This government has not been helping. It has pulled down our social welfare. It is pulling down our social infrastructure. It is pulling down our physical infrastructure. And it is pulling down our psyche as a city. So the government does not decide to continue.
Now, in fairness to the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration, are there some gains, notably when we talk about the quest for grassroots development? In fairness to him, local government autonomy is one of his proponents. What do you say about that?
It's the national leader of APC. He proposed local government autonomy, and in Edo State, they have been handing the local government tax. In Lagos State here, they are not respecting that. In a lot of states where the APC is in charge, they are not respecting that. So it is not who at all. What matters is the Nigerian people should rise local government. And I heard you talking about Southwest Development Commission, Southeast Development Commission. What about the Nigerian Development Commission? Where is it today? It is an agency to steal money for a few people within the ruling class. It is not going to develop anything. Especially as the government is committed to neoliberalism, it's committed to IMF policies, committed to World Bank policies, it's committed to commercialization of education, commercialization of healthcare, excessive taxation of the people, reduction of the protecting power of the Nigerian people. It's an Agbero economy, and it will never save Nigeria, and we need to just stop at the bus stop.
Now, let's take Lagos for instance, where you hail from. Now in Lagos, we've seen other states talk about the State Electoral Commission and their preparedness, the trust of citizens in the ability to conduct local government elections. What's the situation like in Lagos? Is there faith in the State Electoral Commission to conduct the elections? And how is it shaping up for your party in terms of those vying for local government seats and councillor positions?
It's an APC affair. My party has complained, done a lot of protections, made a lot of action. And we are going to engage them actually in terms of practically. But I can bet it did bring an APC action. How did they bring up last week? Lagos Independent Electoral Commission. It's by APC fiat. It is never fair, never free, never transparent, and not credible. So that's fine.
Now, in shaping the credibility of elections at the grassroots, do you have recommendations on how this can be achieved?
And for me, the best way to achieve a credible election is to make it a pro-people election. Is to be fair, is to be free, transparent, credible, and not commercialized. For everybody.
Now, does this entail giving the election conducting duties back to INEC at the center, or how do we go about it? What are some modalities that can be put in place to achieve this credibility you speak of?
There should be a uniform commission to conduct the local government elections nationally, not where government are conducting local government elections. What do you expect?
Now, even at INEC at the central, people talk about the appointment of INEC chairman and how we need to revisit our constitution amendments to also reflect how the appointments are made so that it doesn't seem to serve the executive in any way. Do you agree?
Yes. I agree. Those who appoint them are the ones who are in charge of what they do.
Now, whilst elections shape a key component of these conversations, bureaucracy is another angle to it. Because despite the Supreme Court giving a verdict on local government autonomy, conversations are that 774 council areas in Nigeria have still failed to open their dedicated accounts with the Central Bank of Nigeria, and hence why, up until date, money is still disbursed directly to the states. In a situation like this, I don't know if it's the political will or what, in your opinion, is stalling these bureaucratic bottlenecks that we're seeing.
It's the governors. For them, the chance, the local government is a chance to get more money. And that's why they were crying a wolf when the local government economy came. So, the local government is an ATM for the governor. And that's why they bring any democracy to a billion. And then generally, for this neoliberalism, they know that democracy is going to destroy them. So they are afraid.
Well, it's quite controversial in some sorts when you look at it, because Nigeria is a three-tier government entity, and when you talk about the local governments, the states, and the federal, almost every emphasis is always on the federal. We also forget that social cultural groups and the traditionals too also have their own roles to play. Now, in the case of the presidency and its rotational tendencies in Nigeria, the Afenifere have also made a comment in this regard, saying that there ought to be an understanding between North and South. As a Lagosian that you are, and your opinion of the role the Afenifere has played over time in even shaping the Lagos State governorship seats and the presidency, as it were, what do you make of this call?
I can tell you generally that what matters in terms of all of this is whether they are supposed to do in terms of what the people deserve. You put all of the semantics of dichotomy and the governor, it won't really affect the people for good. So it's about the quantum of political interest that benefits the people. And it's not there. This is that's what we need to return Nigeria to factory setting. If you don't do that, all those ones are just semantics.
Comrade Kunle, you keep making mention of what the people need, a government of the people. It's also supposed to take into cognizance that the people have representation on two fronts. In the states, they have legislators in the State House of Assembly. I'll come to Lagos and its peculiar incidences in a while, but even at the national level in terms of the Senate and the House of Representatives. But the challenge is in terms of the needs assessments and constituency projects over time. Would you say that, taking Lagos for instance, that this representation is one of the reasons why we see Lagos being used as an example of a developing state, a thriving state in terms of its IGR, and more like the commercial and productivity hub of Nigeria?
Well, you said IGR. How do you measure it with this IGR? Globally, go and check all the cities in the world and the rankings of Lagos. It's one of the worst cities in the world.
But relatively at home, it almost seems like the giants among dwarfs.
It's not an example. Lagos is not an example. It is not an example. How many universities do you have in Lagos as a city itself? It's not an example. What is the welfareist position of Lagos to these people living in Lagos? Lagos is not an example. So let nobody say Lagos is an example. It is not an example. It's just a flat sum.
But in the Nigerian scape of things, you don't have many cities other than Port Harcourt and Lagos for reference when we talk about a thriving commercial hub.
You don't compare bad and bad. In real comparing, you should be comparing good and bad. But then everything is bad. What do you compare?
But as someone who has vied for the seats of the governor in Lagos, is this a peculiar challenge that made you vie for the seat, and what would you do differently if you were governor of Lagos?
No, I contested in London State, but I have permission to contest in Lagos. And what we will do differently, I said this already. I'm going to build not just a democratic state, but an egalitarian state. A state where the people will not be milked for their own resources, but the resources will be milked for all. And develop and grow for all too. So the situation we have as it is today is that Lagos is being milked for body in the pockets of a lot of people. There is even a situation recently where people, if you go to Abulete or here, a whole people's land was seized by those in government, and nothing has happened. As it is today, like this, go to Bakoko, they have demolished people's houses, nothing has happened. You have a situation today where you look at the transport system, it's all in the newspapers, and it's not actually happening. It's quite expensive. Lagos where you don't have real thing to work, so it's not really working. I don't think it's there's anything to admire here. If you want to compare Lagos to this, compare to real cities, okay. I don't see people. No people see.
Now, let's come to another issue away from this rotational presidency. We saw a gathering of the Southwest governors, and to put things in perspective, it is over the state of security in the Southwest. ISWAP terrorists are rumoring that they have migrated into the Southwest states. The Amotekun security outfit has been dubbed as largely functional, but the Southwest governors, off the back of their meeting, are considering a joint security surveillance outfit, one that would better protect Southwestern states. Do you have any insights as to the challenges in terms of security and how this collaboration would better strengthen the security of the Southwest?
The best they will do is the jamboree. The last time they came together was on John. Development thing, it was a failure. The last time we've had anything from Southwest that intense people has been doing the whole group of companies. As it is today, I can bet it with you. What these governors are coming together to do together is a jamboree. Yeah, they will tell you to have a market for one over the Southwest. But the real issue is simple, illegal mining. Is what is telling ISWAP, what is telling Boko Haram. What do we stop terrorists today in Nigeria? It's a matter of resources. But among those governors that you were there yesterday, you see many of them supervising illegal mining. Many of them are giving a lot of contract out to illegal miners. Many of them are being paid by Fulani headers everywhere. And they come out openly to tell you they want to do joint security. For me, it's just jamboree. The issue is simple. How many companies are we building in the Southwest? How are we exploring legally the mining sites? And how are we making a collective thing and not individualistic? So when you make it individualistic, you are calling terrorists, you are inviting ISWAP. And these same Southwest people have the president from the Southwest. The Nigerian president has officially signed an imperial and illegal memo with France to be mining Nigerian resources. And we know what France did in Burkina Faso. We knew what they did in Niger here. We knew what they did in Chad. We knew what they have been doing in Gabon, in Senegal, and in a lot of other countries. So if the President Tinubu has signed with Senegal and the Southwest government are coming to say we want to do security, it's like what the Yoruba to say that one year tell and one palapalapa. It means that you leave stroke, you get it, and you are talking about scratches in the body. So for me, it's completely boring. You only want to waste the life of some security people giving them guns. When I saw people be using bombs and all of that. It's a matter of resources. ISWAP, all of them, they are here. That's why it's that the later is the first point of call. It is because there is gold. Serious gold in nature. They will soon go to those states because there are a lot of mining plants there. They will go to the quarries, illegal quarries that are everywhere. So the government know what to do, but they have chosen jamboree. And that's why what they did was just to go and do addressing competition and not stand competition.
Now, Comrade Kunle, you mentioned this illegal mining, and many Nigerians will recall in 2023, there was a 2022 rather, there was a 2023, there was a sad incident in Ibadan, the Bodija estate, if I recall correctly, where
Yes.
the blast was also tied to housing some of these IEDs used for mining illegally, so to say, and we saw the level of damage it left. Are you aware if there has been any strengthened legislation in that regard, and if there are any improvements in curbing some of this illegal mining that you speak about in states like Oyo and its neighboring communities?
That's a very beautiful question. I can tell you that we made the application when I was in Ibadan, and that community that in Bodija. I was at Okoturu, near Songo. And I can tell you that it was a bomb. The governor came denying, said a lot of badass, said they will look into it and all of that. Till today, nothing has come out of that place. As soon as something will start the illegal mining in that place. So they use the people as a guinea pig. So today, terrorism will be using Nigerians, especially in the Southwest, as a guinea pig. And the government are there for them. So that's also part of the problem. They are just an example of showing that these governments are not serious. You find the guy in Jalapiki going to Southwest meeting too. Ask him what they have done at Bodija. Nothing. So it's complete diabolic of Jamboree.
Are you saying that even in terms of compensations, nothing has been done to those who lost property?
Nothing. Have you had anything? Nothing.
Now there are also pressing issues in the Southwest this morning, and I'm hoping that you could also give us your perspectives into them. The conversations on oil wells in the Southwest, particularly the one on Eba Island. We're told that there is dispute on if it belongs to Ogun or Ondo, and we've seen Governor Abiodu's aide also wading into the matter, claiming that it is a property of Ogun State and not Ondo State.
I think whether it belongs to Ondo State or Ogun State, the question is that does it belong to the Ogun State people or the Ondo State people? No. Whether Abiodu or Ayedatiwa, two of them are going to waste these resources and probably personalize it. So they're not going to use it for the people. So there's no point fighting for it. There's no point fighting for it. The Eba Island people, what is happening there? Are they enjoying anything? Is there any dividend for them? No. So if they're fighting for the resources, it's just for them to chop it. They're just chopping it.
You would agree with me the saying that Nigeria is not devoid of legislation or laws to protect her, but the challenge is in the implementation of such laws. With oil exploration, the coming of the Petroleum Industry Act was one that was thought that would bring respite to the people of Eba Island as well as the Niger Delta, which you had earlier referenced. But despite these provisions on what they should receive as derivation, it's the conflict between states. Before now, it happened in Cross River and in Akwa Ibom, where some oil wells were ceded to Akwa Ibom states. Now in the case of Ondo and Ogun states, there's the same challenge. How would you say that the PIA implementation has fared over the course of Nigeria's larger history?
The PIA is a personalization of the Nigerian oil industry. So it should even be revised, it should be removed. It should be terminated. The PIA is a bad of an act. It's meant to personalize the oil industry. It's meant to commercialize it. It's meant to transfer the power, the finance of the oil industry in Nigeria from the public to private pocket. So the PIA is a complete bad and the people act.
Well, in removing the PIA, what would you also more or less suggest that would strengthen the accountability quotient of IOCs exploring oil in such communities?
What we need is the People's Petroleum Act, where the role of the community to be involved and the people will be involved. Whatever is gotten there must be environmentally considered. It must be community considered and collectively considered.
Now these considerations, is it in terms of provisions of basic amenities? We're hoping that you can carry our viewers along to explain in details what these considerations you are proposing entails.
If it is environmentally considered, it means that there will not be oil spill, there will not be bad oil exploration that is destroying the land and a lot of other places. If it is collectively considered, it means that the wealth that is coming from the oil there will be collectively spent on growth and development of all of the people from Ogun and national. You get it? And then if it is not commercialized or privatized, you get what I'm saying? It means that the oil will be used for people's costs. So that doesn't matter.
Now, in light of this, some of the uses of what is derived from oil exploration is to better the provision of social amenities, and I agree with you. But it's quite sadly so that over time, using Niger Delta as a case study, road infrastructure has not been optimal, provision of electricity has also not been optimal. Now, coming to a part where we're still keeping our conversation with the Southwest, a lot of Nigerians were thrown aback that a premier university like the University of Ibadan could suffer power outage in its hospital flank for over 103 days. UCH without power. And despite UCH being reconnected, yesterday we're hearing that the hostels and dormitories of the medical college there have not been reconnected. Let's get your perspective of this failure on the part of government.
It is clear. It is what this government is meant for. That's why you have PIA and a lot of other things. It's meant to serve some personal interests and then the people's interest. And that's why they don't even send UCH. Left to them, they would have sold the University College Department. Left to them, they send out the hospitals and go abroad.
When you say sell, is it talking about privatizing it? I don't understand. Let's get your perspective on that.
It's both ways. You can use privatizing, you can use selling, you do all of that. Both privatizing, then it transfers public property into private pockets.
In light of this, talk me through the Nigerians, much like yourself and I, who are supposed to obtain healthcare services from such institutions. What's our fate, and how can it be bettered?
We are faithless. We do not have anything actually. So the only way we can have a faith is to unite our people and defeat this element in government. If not, the interest is the private pocket.
But these people you're calling on to unite, Comrade Kunle, you would agree with me that Nigerians continue to be sentimental on some certain lines. Ethnicity, religion are two of those lines that will continue to divide Nigerians. In going forward, do you think that this regional government's proposal would be a better way to go about it other than creating more states in Nigeria?
It's a distraction. As far as I'm concerned, during January uprising against point of the removal, Nigerians were united. During the exam, Nigerians were united. End bad government, Nigerians were united. So when we are going to be talking about a revolution, Nigerians will be united beyond ethnicity. Who ethnicity here? Who religion here? So it's not really helping Nigeria, just a distraction.
Now, in the wake of this, one organization has been quite foremost, although they were not part of the End Bad Governance protest. It's the organized labor. One of the first strikes that we're hearing might take place on the 1st of March is the strike against the 50% hike in telecommunications. Organized labor is calling on its affiliate unions across the country to picket telecommunication operation offices and their mast areas if this reversal is not made. I don't know what you make of this. Is this one of the steps in the way to curb the reversal, and how can they force a return of the tariff from the 50% increment?
I call on especially the NSA president, that they are already losing power with Nigerians. Because the issue is simple. You call the strike, a protest the last time, you call it off at the last time. The next boycott, Nigerians will not be prepared because they feel that you can call it off at the last time. It's like the story of an hyena and the child in the farm. It's other people are the other part of the farm, and it's start shouting. Hyena is coming, they went there because they thought it's a play. The second time they got the play, the third time they got the play, the fourth time the hyena came and went to kill. So the NSC, they have been whining Nigerians, according to the street panel. They're not whining us, pay. Call the protest, call it off, call the protest, call it off, call the protest, call it off. Call the strike, call it off. Okay. And then the problem is also that they are also isolating themselves away from both the people's society and the youth struggles. You cannot isolate the labor from the social movement and you expect it to contribute progressively. I call on the NSC president, especially Comrade Kunle Ajayi, who himself started in a very good manner, to start working with the civil society very seriously. Aligning with the civil society, for instance, this telecommunication is the youth that are using data the most. Why is it that there is a constant collaboration with the Nigerian youth movement to fight MTN and the rest? It's not happening. And I think the NSC should stop that. They should stop putting the division as just the net on CWT alone without contacting the people's CWT and the people's net, which is inherent in the social movement. Some of us will be mobilizing for March 1st and will be asking Nigerians to also generally mobilize. But with Nigerians trust NSC, will NSC actually finally do action? If NSC is actually finally doing action, why is NSC isolating itself? If NSC is not isolating itself, why is NSC not doing enough propaganda? So these are questions that the NSA president should answer.
There have been a lot of questions on the person of Comrade Ajayi. You remember last year, there were some invitations handed to him, allegations leveled against the use of the NLC office, part of its floor, the fourth floor in Abuja here, for some despicable activities. Many have also questioned him from his angle of political interest following the incidents that happened in Imo also some years back. I don't know if this have in somewhat deterred the move of the NLC in terms of its association with the people's movements as well. What do you make of these questions that were asked against the person of Comrade Ajayi and how it was handled vis-a-vis these crucial issues that Nigeria are demanding for accountability on?
NSA should not allow itself to be harassed. Everything that you allege against Nigeria is relaxed. And the NSA don't do that. So stop allowing yourself to be harassed. Do the needful. Unite the struggles. Unite with the people. Unite with the civil society. Unite with the youth movement. And take action when it's proper. And stop postponing. Stop calling up strike at the last minute. The last time some of us on our mobilized to the state headquarters, we had meeting. But by evening, they went to a meeting with why is it that you call protest of tomorrow? By 7 p.m., 8 p.m., you go to home meetings. It's complete bananas. I'm frustrated.
Now, one of such meetings is a 10-man committee that was set up to look into this 50% telecom tariff hike. They were given to deliberate on it up until we saw this increment by some telecom operators. The Nigerian Labour Congress has also advised Nigerians of a hour daily boycott of these services. I don't know if you are complying with that boycott and what alternatives Nigerians have if they are to boycott these telecommunication services.
MTN is just anything saying what is not obtainable. How can you lead protest and you ask people to boycott? It's bad that now. They didn't learn from what IPOP did. If IPOP had been on protest by now, we can't would have been out instead of boycott. Boycott is a weaker arrangement and a weaker strategy. And I think that they are being considered to the Nigerian state. All those boycott is barbarish. And you know what? And let them do their business. So it means they're only preaching to the choir, they're talking to the winds.
Well, Comrade Kunle, there are issues affecting the Nigerian people. Some of them politically inclined, but most of not, more socio-economically inclined. Now, and whilst the government agencies take their steps to be able to rescue Nigerians from some sharp practices that are ongoing, it's also about the availability of cash in the hands of Nigerians. Many will point back at the former CBN governor, Godwin Emefiele, and the cash crunch that preceded the 2023 general elections. But I must tell you that ever since then, even bank ATMs have had a challenge of dispensing cash to Nigerians. There was a pegged withdrawal fee that even over-the-counter Nigerians were giving. But this morning, we're seeing somewhat of a U-turn in terms of a CBN circular saying that every bank should not limit withdrawals from ATM to 20,000 naira, that they would be sanctioned. Are you confident that the CBN would follow this circular by the letter of law to the latter, and what's your experience in this regard?
First and foremost, I want to say that you are wrong by saying that the few of the issues are political and the rest are social. It means that you don't really understand ignorance. You didn't get the prison there. Comrade Kunle, you didn't get the prison. I said most of what we have discussed this morning, from our discussion, me and yourself, not in Nigeria. Let's go towards. Real economics show that the most basic issues that are happening in Nigeria today are all politically economic. And I'm happy you went to talk about Naira, you went to talk about them giving 20,000 Naira, talking about shortage of Naira, which is not the issue. The issue is Naira devaluation. How can you devalue your currency and you expect value? It's like deleting the value. That's the simple meaning.
So if we understand you correctly, you're saying this is politically motivated to serve a cause.
Yes, it's to serve neoliberalism, International Monetary Fund and World Bank. It's a result of the money being borrowed excessively by the Nigerian ruling class. That is why we are devaluing our Naira.
Now the other side of the story that we're told is that it's a quest to also mop up liquidity to strengthen the economy of the country.
All those ones are microeconomic lies that are not true. And you should stop inviting quack economic to your TV stations. If you want to talk about a central bank, we talk about political economy. Go to the United States. They don't just put tax laws. And people who don't know anything like Cardi B or Cardi and they put real political economists in the central banks. The central bank is about political economy and not just about financial economics. And financial economy is just a small section of political economy. So the issue is about Naira devaluation, it's about policy. Government economic policy is wide in Naira and massively devalued and it's worthless and cannot even compete in the international stock exchange. Because Nigeria does not have any production processing. We have a situation today where Nigeria have no company, we have no industries. So how do you want to compete globally? That's why the economy is very weak. and you consciously devalue your own naira. It's like we saying that we are selling something and we don't want to put price. The first instance, the government said they were floating. Who told them that barrier? When you float a currency, it's not a mere paper. It will just sink and it sunk. The Nigerian naira had sunk. All of these things are being done. There are conditionalities of IMF and World Bank that is being fulfilled. It doesn't mean that Adodo does not know anything. That is why he went to employ two of his girlfriends as being said publicly.
You can't draw that to a conclusion that they are associated with him that way.
Publicly, and they have not denied. So stop everything to deny what you have not denied.
No, but if one who alleges must prove. That's why I'm saying we should also be cautious in the narrative.
It means that you don't understand law too. When you make allegations, you should respond to say, "Oh, it's not true. It's a simple thing."
That's why you say as alleged. But when you say it conclusively that they are his girlfriends, that's why I'm saying we should be cautious.
I said that as it's being meddled around, and the person them is not saying no. It's just like if you call me a thief and I'm not saying no, it means I'm a thief. It's a simple thing. And aside that too, these people are consultants getting 50 million and 70 million. They should be sacked because the thing is happening in the CBN. Naira keeps going on. So why is the essence of the consultants? So what I'm saying in essence is that Kadozo himself should be sacked because it's a tactic when he doesn't understand anything about political economy. Neither was he making it. We have written a letter that I'm doing a book on the Naira. And I can tell you, as it is today, what is killing the Naira is Naira devaluation and official policy. I'm not talking to macroeconomics issues that some people come to tell you.
Now, why we're also dealing with these microeconomic issues is for Nigerians, the average Nigerians on the streets who complain about lack of access to their own hard-earned funds put in the banks and what it does for faith in financial institutions. At a time when we're seeing a rise of fintechs, we're seeing a rise of POS vendors, and most Nigerians are tilting towards that. If you apply a cab service, most of them now prefer to take the money into their fintech as opposed to their commercial bank accounts. In shaping this perception of such people, they might not follow in some of the conversations you're talking about in terms of the political economics. This will be the only angle for them to understand what's happening.
The access to money itself is a minor issue. It's the quality of the money that is the first issue. It's not just the access to money. Access to money is another thing. It's the secondary issue. The primary issue is the quality of the money, which has been long evaded. And that should be the concern of people who are really concerned about political economy like this. So the access to issue is more of like the distraction. It's a secondary issue.
Now in remedying this issue, we continue to see a situation where the government of the day would not fix an exchange rate cap, and even in keeping with the current access to foreign funds, dollar FX in Nigeria, there's a controlled sales approach to BDCs. In your opinion, how do the government remedify this?
I have said it severally, and I said it several years ago, that the issue is not about the BDC. Neither is it about Aboki, neither is it about cryptocurrency. The issue is about the value of Naira. It is the value that you exchange, not the Naira itself, not how it is being exchanged. It is not about how it is being exchanged, but it's about what is being exchanged. So it's not about now the CBN, they shouted, then put everybody, one of them is spending the same way. Both at the black market and at the official market is the same amount. But as the value gone down, has the Nigerian economy improved? Has the Naira be valuable? Whoa! So all those ones are just jamboree economy.
Now, in going forward, off the back of the GDP report for 2024, we saw situations where the service sector was taking all the plaudits, and we continue to question how Nigeria can be reversed from a largely consumption and import-dependent economy to a production and manufacturing economy. You've talked about the lack of absence of industries, whereby we still have modern industries that were thriving in the 80s and 90s, but up until then, these industries have closed shop. We continue to see major players exit Nigeria, the likes of P&G, Procter & Gamble, just to mention but a few that have also closed shop in Nigeria. In making this U-turn, what are some postulations you would make to reverse the situation?
The Nigerian economy itself is already moving seriously to the services sector. It has already moved to the service sector. That is what IMF and World Bank have programmed Nigeria to do. It's meant to say that, okay, the world resources should be given to some people, let them build it and the rest. No production, no people employment, Nigerians in serious turmoil and all that. So Nigeria is meant to move towards barbarism, as it is. So moving towards barbarism, you don't need companies. That's why even B&G, F&G, B&G go away. They don't mind. Their own is for them to return to bring a budget of 25 trillion and still 20 trillion, 22 trillion. And then some rich people have money in their pockets to have to buy police, buy soldiers, and continue to live in Nigeria. And when they are sick, they go abroad. You get it? And not the rest. Or they don't. When employment doesn't matter to them, production doesn't matter. What matters to them is primitive accumulation of the collective resources.
Well, now that you mentioned going abroad, it brings my mind to another issue in the news. Yesterday, the National Security Advisor told the Canadian Embassy to go to hell over visa denials to the Army chiefs and others. I don't know if you followed the story and can give us your perspective on the position of the NSA and the Canadian Embassy's involvement in denying visas to the CDS and others.
He paid Ribadu well. No, Ribadu was so pain, he was almost crying. I watched the video. So it's a shameless animal. But he was almost crying. How will Canada say they are denying Nigeria? Make your country Canada first now. And what are you going to do in Canada? So if he's talking about men, that Canada should go to them, they won't come to Nigeria. Nigeria is the bigger hell.
Now, if it happens to high-ranking government officials at that level, for Nigerians who are not part of the challenges we're facing in terms of responsibility, but are vying for better educational opportunities or even working opportunities in countries like Canada, what does this portend for the future of the generations unborn in terms of how we're viewed and the strength of our passports?
Let all those generations come together, chase away those who are causing problems in Nigeria that Canada don't do. Immediately Canada doesn't deny visa. Let also deny them Canada visa here, so that they will be living our lives or controlling our lives. If we deny them people's visa, we deny them visa into Asoro, deny them visa into Alausa, deny them visa into Alabaka, deny them visa into our CBN, into our funding and the rest. It means we will rebuild our country and we will take after what Canada is doing. So for me, Canada is correct. Nobody should have it. Let's fight within to make Nigeria far, far better than Canada.
Now, even away from Canada, it almost seems as though in terms of policies affecting countries' dependence on the West for grants, much like the US, we saw the news and the hula baloo that followed President Donald Trump's reversal of US aid to Nigeria, particularly with our HIV burden as well. Now, in response, the Nigerian government is saying it would release 1.7 billion naira for health interventions. What do you make of this development?
So, what is a parable to us that we have to also have self-development? So, maybe it's a ginger. If Trump is dealing with our leaders, look at that. I want Trump to ban all Nigerian politicians from having children abroad, from coming to US hospital and all the rest. Maybe they will start building hospitals in Nigeria. Maybe they start building quality schools in Nigeria. And maybe they will start building a better place here. So that's no matter. No matter what Trump does to Nigerians and everyone, the question is, why are we living in Nigeria? Why is Nigeria not an Eldorado? Why is Nigeria not the heaven that we all seek?
Now, some of the challenges is in terms of what many say our negligence for our blessed abundant resources, particularly in agriculture. This morning, the federal government is talking about how much is obtainable in fisheries and aquaculture, projecting that it can also generate 4 trillion naira from such business ventures. I don't know what you make of it, but do you feel that Nigeria would ever revisit the glory days of the early 70s and 80s when agriculture was almost a mainstay?
Please stop deceiving yourself. Every federal government is saying anything about agricultural development or anything. They are not. They are committed to borrowing money in World Bank and meeting. And that's why they keep money every time, every month. By next month, now you see money again. You do a lot of other money. So they are not committed to developing any part of the country. So please don't depend on everybody news.
Well, we can only, as citizens, and especially fourth estate of the realm gentlemen, look forward to discuss on this, to bring awareness to it, and also, in some sort of quest, hope that the accountability we demand will be had from it.
How can you bring awareness to what does not exist?
What I'm asking so is because
people invest in agriculture. They are only doing it for price sake.
Comrade Kunle, what I'm asking so is because in some instance, people talk about the fact that a Ministry of Livestock was created. If we say we shouldn't discuss it, how do we ensure that such a creation would bear fruit? Or in speaking to optimism, to be optimistic in some stead, how do we visit?
It was just created to pacify some people. So for me, it's a gambling. It's just like when they created the Ministry of Niger Delta. Did you develop Niger Delta? No. So please don't.
But in some way we saw it reduce the agitations. We also saw
it was only done with a very sincere government like we are that government. Although it was the PDP government, it's a ruinous and neoliberal government. That instead very fair. But not like Tinubu and declared war on Nigeria generally. In everything, economic, political, cultural, so anything that Tinubu is doing, you just know that it's just what they call siating in the country. It's just a gay dribbling. It's just dribbling over.
Now, as we wrap up this conversation, heading into 2027, the PDP, in your perspective, a house needing much repair, the Labour Party, one that also produced the candidates that a lot of Nigerians were swayed by in the last presidential election, but going into 2027, he for one has said he's not looking to have any coalition going into the election. How would you say that this People's Party and the candidates Nigerians would entrust with their votes can be formed?
The Labour Party is an liberal party. Is meant to just destroy the PDP. That's what it was created for, and it has done its needful. So as far as I'm concerned, anybody expecting the Labour Party to do anything to himself is only deceiving himself. Both Peter Obi and Tinubu are business people. You understand? So politically, to their political partners. What we need is a revolutionary party that has different ideology and policy from the current party. And that is the African Action Congress. That is the only party in Nigeria that can fight for a new Nigeria. That is the party led by election. And that's how you see that in the election. Shura is the only one that has been standing for Nigerians and have been standing to reflect of what is telling in the campaign and manifesto. Every other person has been doing Nigeria and I know.
But it almost seems as though Showore is more concerned with the IGP and its tenure elongation. It has been of recent only talking about that the most.
I think that you should also respect him in terms of what they are doing in a lot of other things. The IGP is just the face of a lot of resistance. So he has done several representatives instead of just the IGP. You know? Just being commercial in the truth.
Now, but let's talk about this IGP tenure extension and the way it was handled at the National Assembly in terms of passing the tenure elongation. Many talk about it from the fact that even in the Police Service Commission, some senior ranking police officers are not too happy with the tenure elongation, and it's somewhat impeded on their career progress. Why would you think? Why would you?
It is already playing out itself. The senior officers are refusing to vote, and you can see that it is impunity to change the section of the law because of just one individual. So for me, IGP is an illegal for the general police, and you should resign immediately.
Now, Comrade Kunle, the other conversation I also got wind of over the past few weeks is the fact that certain servicemen are asking that if we have tenure elongation for teachers and health workers as granted by the president, that they too in some way would want their tenure elongated, citing that even in the NNPC, Alhaji Mele Kyari, who has also passed the age of 60, they're talking about the change of nomenclature and the fact that that retirement clause should not affect him. But those were some of the words on the streets as to why we're seeing some of what we're seeing now. That 60 age retirement life expectancy in Nigeria and the challenge with getting into school early in the country. If you were to look at it from a welfarist angle, would you say that there is any truth to take from that?
The peculiarity of policing, you know it is strength happen and then happen. In fact, in some other countries, those who are 40, 45, somebody was telling me now, I didn't just go to Switzerland, that once you are 40, 45, you are almost in your retirement. You are not going to use you again as a police officer. So any one of them talking about them and the professor is just deceiving themselves. The person it's working on only the intellect and not the physical. If you want to be an intelligent agent in the police force, why is by 16 what intelligence do you have again? You should just get off that. There are ways to work with retired police officers, retired soldiers, even within the army. Even when you are retired, there's a way they still work with them. So for me, it's no excuse. It's a bad data.
But you have seen the role between the Nigerian Police Force and the Police Service Commission over even recruitment. We continue talking about the fact that we are largely understaffed in terms of boots on ground. But when it comes to recruitment, the NPF and the PCS continue to clash over it. I don't know what you say in that instance. How can that issue be resolved?
What the essence of the recruitment itself? Is the recruitment for the sake of real policing or for to build power? It's for people to build political power. And that's why there's the clash. And because of the large amount of employment in Nigeria, you see that a lot of people that are in the police force today, they never wanted to be police officers. So that's how you find all those.
It was more like the only job available.
Yes.
Not born out of the sincerity to serve one's nation.
At all.
Now, it almost feels as though Nigeria now has that challenge of re-engineering patriotism, even in areas of career choices for the younger generation. A lot of younger persons now want to go into content creation. They want to be in the entertainment sector. Very few persons you ask want to be servicemen and women or even venture into governance. How do we engender increased youth participation in Nigeria, where a country of over 200 million population, less than 91 million obtained voters' card to vote in the 2023 election? Do you think we have a huge challenge in terms of social re-engineering ahead of us?
Yes, because a bad government will only give them to bad youths. Yeah. And the youths have not interest in what is happening in the country today. So how long will you be the child of the future? So it's for me not the issue of a youth challenge. It's a national challenge, not just a youth challenge.
Comrade, in your party, especially with the fact that it's a revolution ideology, do you have statistics on how many youths are willing to be card-carrying members, as against just having a voter's card? How many youths are ready to buy into this ideology? And do you have a strategy for a grassroots mobilization in that regard?
Why not? AAC as it is going to over 100,000 members. And so we keep recruiting every day, especially with the surge we have in the north now. A lot of northern youth are joining us. So AAC as it is the party that will compete very seriously. And that's how you see that you have a member winning councillorship in Bauchi, in Gombe, and other places. It's going to rise the more. And that's why we feel very seriously that as a revolutionary party, our revolutionary ideology and revolutionary actions are very important. And that's why we keep mobilizing, we keep resisting, we keep taking political action. Because we know very soon the pendulum is swinging and it will soon totally to a revolutionary movement which will come. Another Nigeria will be very possible.
Now, Comrade, lastly, as we look to close, the challenge with the cost of vying for elective positions in Nigeria, it's also been greeted with the conversations of independent candidacy. Do you think that there would come a time in Nigeria where independent candidacy will be a thing, or even the cost of buying declaration of interest funds will be affordable for the average Nigerian youth who is looking to vie as a young person who is not too young to run?
Except when you have the winning elections. That's why you can have a situation where nobody can. I contested for governorship and I didn't pay in time for the form. You get it. So it's not. Come again,
comrade. You say you didn't pay a dime for your form?
Yes, I contested the governorship in
Please give us more insights into that. How did that go by? Did someone sponsor it, or did the party give it out for free?
The party gave me for free because I'm a foundational member of the party. And I've done everything needful as a member of the party. So there's no need to commercialize the form. Because the party believes that I'm going there not to go and steal, but to go and work. So in fact, the party itself believes that if it had it, the party would have been the major sponsor of my election. And not just friends and comrades and dependents. That's how to really the real party.
Well, Comrade Kunle Ajayi, I must thank you. Quite a very thought-provoking conversation we've had, although on your part also quite objective to some largely acclaimed issues in terms of the contracts on where it lies in the people's interest. But we appreciate you for taking our time to share your thoughts with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're looking for
a long and very lovely discussion.
Well, we're looking forward to having you soon. I don't know if you have any plans on the lighter note for Valentine going into the rest of today.
Well, there's no love anywhere because there's no money.
There's no love where there's no money. Are you serious, Comrade Ajayi?
There's no money in Nigeria. Everywhere is just no love. I'm here.
But love is supposed to transcend all. Love above everything. Love is supposed to transcend. No money. Love is supposed to remain constant.
How can you be in love when you are in hunger? I'm a poet. I've written several poems to that question. There is no love with hunger.
Well then, Comrade Ajayi, enjoy the rest of your day. We thank you for taking our time to be on the show.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the day too. Happy Valentine's to